And the next award comes in the category of the fakest fact check, which goes to Fact Check NI for can you generate a positive result for COVID-19 from an RT-PCR test? Now, of course, I'll link up this whole fact check from the good fact checkers over at Fact Check Northern Ireland for you, but let's read through some of the important excerpts from this together. The universal standard when testing for the virus that causes COVID-19 is to use a maximum of 40 cycles of amplification as part of the RT-PCR process. If a positive signal is detected with more than 40 cycles of amplification, this would be reported as a negative test. Neither of the claims about Kary Mullis in the piece that they're examining here in this fact check are true. Reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, RT-PCR, is a laboratory technique used to test for a positive diagnosis of COVID-19. A Facebook post claims that the settings used can be made to generate a positive result. If people test themselves at, say, 60 to 65 cycles of application, then I will test positive and so will everyone else. The post also attributes claims by the inventor of the RT-PCR testing technique, Kary Mullis, stated his test cannot be used to diagnose infectious diseases at all. He was adamantly opposed to his test being used for COVID-19 right up to the point of his death. Claim 1. A high number of amplification cycles used in an RT-PCR test will lead to a positive diagnosis of COVID-19. Inaccurate, according to the fact-checkers at FactCheckNI. Real-time RT-PCR is the preferred method of testing for a positive diagnosis of COVID-19 in the NHS, as is the case across the world. It is one of the fastest and most accurate laboratory methods for detecting the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus, the virus that causes COVID-19. Typically, the process is to go through 40 cycles, which will create billions of copies of any viral DNA strand in the sample. As new copies of viral DNA are made, these will release a fluorescent dye which can be monitored in real time by the person running the test. Okay, let's stop there. I mean, there's more to debunk here, but let's stop right there. Sorry, nope. Fact Check NI, you have it factually wrong. You are spreading fake news and misinformation through your fact check. Because, look, I'm not even going to cite the crazy conspiracy theorists over at, say, offguardian.org that had an excellent article about this months and months and months and months ago, early on in the scamdemic, blowing the whistle about this particular trick up the scamster's sleeves. Are PCR tests scientifically meaningless? Spoiler, yes, they are. No, I'm not even going to cite those crazy conspiracy theorists who were right all along. Surprise, surprise. No, I'm going to cite the arbiters of truth, the WHO. I can only say WHO-approved information, right? Well, the WHO has come out to admit, yes, high cycle thresholds give false positives, and we have to be concerned about that. That's why we should set the cycle rate to 35. Yeah, you think so? No, okay, you don't like the WHO? Then I'll cite the other Lord God, Emperor, and Arbiter of all that is true and false during these scamdemic times, Tony Fauci.
What is now sort of evolving into a bit of a standard that if you get a cycle threshold of 35 or more, that the chances of it being replication competent are minuscule. So that if somebody, and we have patients, and it's very frustrating for the patients as well as for the physicians. Somebody comes in and they repeat their PCR and it's like 37 cycle threshold, but you almost never can culture virus from a 37 threshold cycle. So I think if somebody does come in with 37, 38, even 36, you got to say, it's just dead nucleotides, period.
Now, as I know you know, dear faithful listeners of the Corbett Report, I am not holding Tony Fauci up as any sort of arbiter of truth on anything, but the fact-checkers of the fake news peddling scam fact-check industry that has become so prevalent online in recent years, and which I exposed in episode 381 of the Corbett Report podcast on who will fact-check the fact-checkers, certainly does hold Fauci up as an arbiter of truth who cannot be questioned, or you will be scrubbed from the internet. So I hereby submit that Fact Check NI should be scrubbed from the internet for daring to go against Tony Fauci and what he says about the test cycle threshold and where it should be placed. No, 40 is not what what is being peddled these days by the WHO or Fauci or anyone else. So Fact Check NI, factually incorrect in their fact check. Surprise, surprise. But it gets worse. It goes on. They talk about Claim 2 in this piece that they're supposedly debunking, where they say Kary Mullis, the inventor of the PCR technique, said that the RT-PCR cannot be used to diagnose infectious diseases at all. Reuters fact-checkers found that the quote undermining PCR tests was misattributed to Mullis and was taken out of context. The claim is inaccurate. And Claim 3, Kary Mullis was opposed to RT-PCR testing being used to test for COVID-19 before his death. Inaccurate. Kary Mullis died on 7th of August 2019, months before the first case of COVID-19 was reported to the World Health Organization in December of that year. Case closed. Nope, sorry, once again, factually incorrect. Firstly, of course, they point to a Reuters fact check, which, it's Reuters. How can it be wrong? They definitively debunked this silly claim that Mullis was apparently trying to undermine the idea that PCR can be used for diagnostic purposes. Posh. And the Reuters fact check, when you go through that link and go into that fact check fake news, you will find them weirdly enough, scrabbling to try to find some piece that was published in 1996 or something regarding HIV that Mullis was talking about at the time. And it seems this might be a genuine quote, although we can't verify it ourselves, but it was published in a reputable way. So maybe this claim, but it doesn't talk about what they say that it's talking about. What hogwash. Again, Reuters fact-checkers, the crack squad, can maybe find some reference that was published in print 25 years ago, maybe, but it doesn't quite relate to what's talking. Wait. How about anyone on the internet can look it up in 3 seconds for themselves and find out in his own words exactly what Kary Mullis, the inventor of the RT-PCR technique, had to say about its use for diagnostic purposes?
This to Kary, how do they misuse PCR to estimate all these supposed free viral RNAs that may or may not be there?
I think misuse PCR is not quite. I don't think you can misuse PCR. Actually, no, the results, the interpretation of it. See, if you can say, if they could find this virus in you at all. And with PCR, if you do it well, you can find almost anything in anybody. It starts making you believe in the sort of Buddhist notion that everything is contained in everything else, right? I mean, because if you can amplify one single molecule up to something that you can really measure, which PCR can do, then there's just very few molecules that you don't have at least one single one of them in your body, okay? So that could be thought of as a misuse of it, just to claim that it's meaningful.
So I wonder why Reuters and Fact Check NI and these other fact checkers don't want you to actually listen to the actual documentable words of someone like Kary Mullis. They just want you to take their word for it. Oh, that's misattributed. That's wrong. Why would they try to keep you away from this information?
What is it? What is it about humanity that wants to go to all the details and stuff and listen? You know, these guys like Fauci get up there and start talking. You know, he doesn't know anything really about anything, and I'd say that to his face. Nothing. The man thinks you can take a blood sample and stick it in an electron microscope, and if it's got a virus in there, you'll know it. He doesn't understand electron microscopy, and he doesn't understand medicine. And he should not be in a position like he's in. Most of those guys up there on the top are just total administrative people, and they don't know anything about what's going on at the bottom. You know, those guys have got an agenda, which is not what we would like them to have, being that we pay for them to take care of our health in some way. They've got a personal kind of agenda. They make up their own rules as they go. They change them when they want to, and they smugly, like Tony Fauci, does not mind going on television in front of the people that pay his salary and lie directly into the camera.
Oh, that's right. That's because the plainly visible evidence that you can hear and see for yourself, documented on videotape, of Kary Mullis saying such things, goes against what the fact checkers want you to believe, so they'll just pretend it doesn't exist. Yeah, we were able to dig up some quote that was attributed to him sometime 25 years ago in print, but he didn't really say that. Trust us. Oh yeah? How about that video? Huh? Fact check that. Reuters? Oh, you're not going to, because you are fake news peddlers whose entire raison d'etre is to stop people from thinking for themselves. Don't worry, we've fact-checked this. We've debunked it for you. You don't have to worry your pretty little head about such things. We looked into it and we found that those mean people on the internet are lying, so don't believe them. Indeed. Well, again, you can believe them or you can believe your own lying eyes, and you get to choose. But before you do so, I hope you will examine episode 381 of my podcast, where I go through the fact-checking industry as it has developed and talk about the funding where these fact-checkers get their money and how that influences what is going on here. No, of course, they're all above the fray. There's no such thing going on. Anyway, I'll leave that for you to investigate further if you haven't yet done so, but not before addressing the other part of the claim, which is a complete straw man that FactCheck NI is attempting to debunk here, that Kary Mullis never said anything about COVID-19 because he died before the first reported cases. Okay, yeah, I have not once, never, in all of my travels on the internet, found anyone who claimed that Kary Mullis said anything specifically about SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. I have seen a lot of speculation about the interesting timing of his death coming just months before, as FactCheck NI notes, just months before COVID-19 and the entire scamdemic that was based on these faulty interpretations of PCR testing and results. Just convenient timing of his death, that is interesting in and of itself. But at any rate, whether that was a completely natural death or not, no, of course, no one is claiming that he was specifically talking about SARS-CoV-2 or the scamdemic that happened after he died. No one. That is a straw man. No, the only claim I've ever seen in my travels online is that, hey, here's the guy who invented the PCR saying that it can be wildly misinterpreted and used for particular agendas. And there you go. There he is saying it in his own words. Don't listen to me saying it. Listen to him. Anyway, I think this goes to prove the point that fact checkers, generally speaking, are there to stop you from thinking rather than to help you to think, and will actively preclude information from your attention when it goes against their narrative or makes them uncomfortable. And there are many, many, many examples of that from this past year. FactCheck NI just happens to win for this particular entry, but many, many others could have been nominated or won. If you want one particular example, how about factcheck.org's new coronavirus wasn't predicted in simulation, which I did note in episode 381 and debunked there. So that could serve as a runner-up for this award. But let's move on to the next award, because we have many to dole out this evening. The next award in this ceremony is for Fear Porn Story.